A seemingly quiet winter night, a bark echoing in the dead of night, and a blood-stained wristwatch buried deep beneath an orange tree. That was the beginning of a series of crimes that would shake the entire Nam-Trake district to its core. It wasn't high-tech surveillance, nor elite agents, but the sharp gaze of a dog named Mun and the cold, precise instincts of a police officer that unearthed long-buried secrets. That a case thought to be at a dead end was cracked open by loyalty, instinct, and an unshakable belief that defied logic. Watch until the end, and you'll understand. Sometimes, justice begins with a bark no one pays attention to. This story is being told on Debut Story. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next investigations. The wind of early winter crept through every crack and crevice, carrying a chilling cold down to Dong Nam village. In Nam Trake district, it was the quiet night of a mid-December evening. Everything seemed wrapped in peaceful slumber. Only the faint chirping of insects whispered through the fog. It felt calm, but that was merely a thin veil hiding secrets waiting to be exposed. Officer Hung, 30 years old, from the Nam Trake District Criminal Unit, walked quietly down a familiar village path. His loyal K-9 partner Mun, a clever and courageous Malinois, by his side, Estet, Lunar New Year. Approach security threats grew more complex. Hung had been ordered to increase night patrols, but he was a quiet, introspective man. His colleagues often joked that he listens with instinct and sees with logic, for Hung had an uncanny ability to solve cases others thought impossible. It was as if he could smell crime, see clues hidden in plain sight. Mun, with his signature tan coat, walked confidently beside Hung, ears perked, sensing every subtle sound. Suddenly, Mun froze, nose sniffing the ground, then looked up at Hung with alert eyes. Hung bent down, patting Mun's head. "Easy, Mun, what is it?" At that moment, an elderly woman called out from the end of the lane. "Officer, officer." She shuffled toward them, worry etched deep in her weathered face. "It's been 2 nights now. The dogs in the neighborhood keep barking like mad at 1 or 2 in the morning. I don't know why. I'm scared." Hung frowned. Barking dogs at midnight in a peaceful village was highly unusual. He asked the old woman a few more questions, then decided to patrol the area with Mun. The night grew darker, the cold dew heavy on the ground. Mun walked beside him, clearly more restless than usual, constantly sniffing the air, ears twitching. That Hung's instinct screamed. Something was wrong. As they neared a house with a high wall and locked gate, Mun suddenly let out a sharp bark, then bolted toward a bush. Behind the house, barking furiously and digging at the ground with his paws. Hung rushed over, shining his flashlight where Mun was focused. Something metallic glinted under the beam, a men's wristwatch with a worn leather strap, its glass face scratched, and most chilling of all, dried blood along the buckle seam. Hung carefully picked up the watch, examining it, a blood-stained watch, hidden in a bush. Clearly not something someone dropped by accident. Mun continued growling and sniffing the area, aggressively, as if trying to confirm to Hung that this was no coincidence. The house was dark and silent, no lights on inside. A motorbike still stood in the yard. The gate remained locked from the inside. The eerie stillness gave Hung a sense of unease. He knocked on the neighbor's door. A middle-aged man, groggy-eyed, answered. "Excuse me," Hung said. "I wanted to ask. Have you seen the people from the house next door lately?" "No one's been out in days." The man rubbed his eyes. "You mean Mr. Hung and Miss Twee's house?" "Yeah, I haven't seen them go to the market in the past 2 days," the neighbor replied. "Haven't seen their gate open either." Hung turned once more to look at the silent house. Just then, Mun paced along the fence, suddenly lifting his head to let out a long, chilling howl that echoed through the still night. Hung's hand reached instinctively for his field notebook. He scribbled down a single line. "Dog howled in the night. Abnormal reaction likely related to scent of blood or corpse." Then quietly beneath that note, he added, "Case 02, Nam Trake began with a bark, guided by instinct. Something inside is rotting beneath the long silence." Hung made the decision to return to the station, report the incident, and send the bloodstained watch for forensic testing. He had no idea that this small object would turn out to be the first critical link in a horrifying murder case, a chain of crimes he and Munn would have to unravel. With nothing but reason and instinct, early the next morning, an emergency search warrant for Tran An's house was issued. The cold iron gate, quiet and undisturbed, was finally swung open, revealing a small courtyard and a dust-covered motorbike. A heavy, oppressive air seemed to hang over the entire two-story house. Its doors locked, curtains tightly drawn, as Hung stepped across the threshold, an unsettling weight pressed against his chest. Inside, everything was untouched, strangely tidy. Too tidy. The living room showed no signs of struggle. A large TV sat lifeless on the shelf. The wooden furniture, draped with white cloths, stood untouched. The kitchen was spotless, bowls and chopsticks neatly arranged in the cabinets. Everything was silent, as if time had simply stopped. Hung and his team began carefully checking every corner of the house. Nothing unusual, no signs of a break dash and a robbery. Then Munn was brought inside. Immediately, the K-9 officer sprang into action, sniffing every surface with heightened focus, his tail wagging rapidly. When they reached the bedroom corner, Munn suddenly barked, his sharp claws scratching furiously at the floorboards. His fur bristled, body tense, clearly agitated. Hung immediately focused his attention there. Under the flashlight's beam, a dark brown stain appeared beneath the old wooden wardrobe, almost blending in with the aged wood. "Looks like blood," one officer muttered. Forensic specialists were immediately called to the scene. They used luminol, a special chemical that glows when it comes into contact with blood, even if the blood has long dried or been wiped clean. But in the darkness, when luminol was sprayed on the suspicious area, a strange blue glow slowly emerged, confirming Hung's initial suspicion. It was blood. The samples were carefully collected, sealed, and sent for lab testing in hopes of identifying the person it belonged to. While the forensic team continued their work, Munn suddenly bolted toward the back door, which led to the storage shed. He barked and clawed frantically, as if something important was hidden inside. Hung gestured to his colleagues to thoroughly inspect the shed, but inside, there were only a few old gardening tools and some empty cotton barrels. Nothing seemed out of place. However, Hung's instincts told him not to dismiss Munn's signal. That dog had never been wrong. That it was possible the perpetrator had disposed of the evidence elsewhere, or had meticulously wiped all traces clean. Hung shook his head. With years of experience in the force, he knew crimes always leave traces. Even the smallest clue, if you're patient, will lead to the truth. The mysterious disappearance of Tran and quickly began spreading through Dongnam village, shaking the quiet rural community to its core. Along within, his wife No Lutwi had also vanished without a trace. Their phones were unreachable. Neighbors, friends, and family all had no idea where they'd gone. That day, Hung visited the surrounding neighbors, patiently collecting even the smallest bits of information. That a middle-aged woman living directly across the street offered a chilling account. "On the night of the 19th, I heard a loud argument from their house. Sounded like Mr. Hung shouting and Mrs. Twee crying. Then it suddenly went silent. I didn't think much of it at the time. This information only deepened Hung's belief that the couple's disappearance was connected to a potential murder case. The argument, the bloodstain under the wardrobe, the bloodied watch, all were scattered pieces of a dark puzzle. But there was more. The elderly woman who had reported the strange dog behavior earlier also recalled something else. That night, I heard lots of barking from the empty field behind Mr. Hung's house. Very unusual. Dogs hardly ever bark over there. Hung noted everything down meticulously. Every detail, no matter how small, could be a critical lead. He ordered that a missing persons case be officially opened for both N and Lutwi. He also requested a full analysis of their phone activity, hoping to trace their final movements. Meanwhile, back at Nam Trek District Police Headquarters, Munn was undergoing scent tracking training. That a shirt belonging to Tran An, taken from his wardrobe, was used as a scent reference. Hung believed that with Munn's powerful sense of smell, the dog would be a vital ally in locating the missing couple. He carefully laid the shirt in front of Mun, allowing the dog to familiarize himself with Anne's scent. Mun sniffed deeply, snorting and circling the shirt, as if imprinting the scent deep into his mind. Hung stood by patiently, offering quiet encouragement to his canine partner. Hung looked at Mun with unwavering trust in his eyes that he knew that in the battle against crime, one needed not just sharp reasoning, but also keen instinct. And Mun was the embodiment of that instinct. Every one of Mun's steps, every bark, could bring Hung closer to the truth. This case felt like a dark labyrinth, full of dead ends and traps. But Hung believed that with Mun's help, he would find the way out. He would bring the truth to light, no matter how brutal that truth might be. A foul stench rose from a corner of an orange orchard in Dai Duong village, not far from Dong, an old farmer. While tending to his trees, caught the smell that at first, he assumed it was just a dead animal. But as he approached, he recoiled in horror. It was the smell of a decomposing human body. The authorities were immediately notified. Hung and Mun were dispatched to the scene. The orchard was secluded, dense with trees, and cloaked in an eerie stillness. As soon as they arrived, Mun barked fiercely, fur bristling, pulling hard at the leash toward the largest orange tree. Hung could feel the tension rising in his partner's body. A dreadful intuition crept over him, but he gave the order. The officers began to dig. Layer by layer, the earth was removed. The stench grew stronger, until finally, something wrapped in black plastic tarp was unearthed. When the tarp was peeled back, everyone froze in shock. Inside was the contorted corpse of a man, already decomposing. Soon after, the forensic team arrived. Initial examination concluded. The victim was a male, estimated age 30 to 35, cause of death. Blunt force trauma to the back of the head and a deep fracture suggested he had been struck with a heavy, blunt object. Hung peered closely at the body. The face was unrecognizable, warped by decay. But then he saw it, a green jacket familiar to his eyes. And then, the watch, a worn-out leather-strapped wristwatch with a scratch face that was the same one Hung had found under the jackfruit tree behind Anne's house. This very watch had been described in detail by Anne's father when reporting his son missing. A keepsake and cherished, the location of the body, the dried blood, the matching watch. Everything was beginning to line up. A chilling thought seized Hung's heart. Could this body be Trannan? But if it was, then who had murdered him so viciously? And where was his wife, Lutui? Was she also a victim? Or was she the mastermind? Countless questions stormed Hung's mind that he knew he was facing a ruthless opponent lurking in the shadows. That a deadly game of wits was only just beginning. And then came the DNA results. The body found under the orange tree was indeed Tran, and his death brought closure to the family's desperate search. But it also marked the official beginning of a murder investigation at Nam Trake District Police Headquarters. The atmosphere turned grim. Hung, his face lined with exhaustion, hadn't slept properly in days. A crushing pressure bore down on him. Not just the responsibility of a police officer, but a deep personal anguish for not yet unmasking the killer. Now, with the confirmation in hand, Hung made a decision. He would bring Mun back to Tranan's house point one more time. Hung wanted to uncover any clue that might have been missed. The moment he stepped through the doorway, Mun reacted more intensely than before. The dog barked sharply, then dashed straight into the kitchen, scratching furiously at the floor near the sink area. Hung and the investigators immediately focused on that spot at first. They saw nothing unusual, but Mun kept barking at a small crack beneath the cabinet. Hung ordered the cabinet to be dismantled, and there it was, a bloodstained piece of cloth stuffed deep into the crevice, a final desperate attempt by the killer to hide the evidence. Forensic tests confirmed. The blood matched, and it was clearly a torn piece of the shirt and wore the night he was murdered. The killer had tried to clean everything, but still made mistakes. Hung sat alone in his office, the case file laid out in front of him. The wristwatch, the bloodied cloth, and the witness statements. He began to piece together the behavioral pattern of the perpetrator. The evidence disposal was panicked and amateurish. The body was buried nearby, suggesting the killer had little time or lacked the composure to plan carefully. Hung theorized the killer may have acted impulsively, possibly during an argument, not with premeditated intent. The current leads were beginning to point toward a prime suspect, No Lu Tui, Anne's wife, the argument that night, her sudden disappearance, her total radio silence. All signs painted her as someone deeply connected to the crime. But what was she? A victim, a murderer, or a key player in a larger web of darkness? Hung didn't yet have the answers. He knew he had to tread carefully, untangle every thread before drawing any conclusions. The investigation still had a long and difficult road ahead, but Hung was determined. He would not stop until the truth came to light. No Lu Tui remained missing. Her absence only deepened suspicions about her role in Anne's death. Hung decided to dig into her past, hoping to find something, anything, that could shed light on this enigmatic woman. And then, a crucial discovery. Through interviews and phone records, Hung uncovered a past connection. Lu Tui once had a close relationship with a man named Hong Vai, that he was a former friend of Anne's, someone Anne had once trusted deeply. But their friendship had ended abruptly due to an undisclosed falling out. Could the reappearance of Nguyen Van Tien have anything to do with Anne's death and the mysterious disappearance of Lu Tui? Hung began digging into Nguyen Van Tien's background. He had surveillance cameras in the area surrounding Anne's house checked, focusing on the night the argument occurred. But by sheer luck, one camera caught a glimpse of a strange man loitering near Anne's home around the estimated time of the fatal incident. The footage was grainy, but some features were discernible. A tall, slim man with dark skin and a small scar on his left eyebrow. Hung immediately ordered a search for potential witnesses at a nearby street. Vendor came forward. I saw a guy like that night. Tall, skinny, dark-skinned, and that scar. Yes, I noticed that he bought a pack of cigarettes for me, stood there for a while, and kept staring at Anne's house. As Hung continued investigating Nguyen Van Tien, he uncovered troubling facts. The man had a criminal record for assault. His temper was volatile, with a reputation for violence. One acquaintance revealed. That guy. You never knew what would set him off. He once beat someone half to death over a petty argument. This only deepened Hung's suspicions. Tien had been seen near the crime scene, had a history of violence, and had a past relationship with Lu Tui. Was it possible that Lu Tui and Nguyen Van Tien had conspired to murder him? Or could Lu Tui also be one of Tien's victims? The case was turning into a labyrinth of lies and violence. Hung knew he was up against a cunning and dangerous adversary. He and Mun needed to tread carefully. One wrong move could spring a trap, one he might not walk away from. But Tien had vanished, leaving behind no trace. Hung hit a wall that he needed a breakthrough, a new lead. And once again, Mun proved his worth. Hung expanded the search perimeter beyond Dongnam village into abandoned, remote areas, places where someone might hide. Near the edge of a forest, in a dilapidated house, Mun suddenly barked wildly, scratching at a pile of discarded fabric in the corner. Hung flipped the pile and discovered a black jacket with dried bloodstains. The blood appeared old, but consistent with the blood they had seen on him. Beside the jacket was a damaged cell phone, seemingly smashed. Hung carefully collected the phone. Though broken, he hoped it still held recoverable data. He sent it to the cyber forensics unit. Using advanced recovery methods, the technicians managed to extract several text messages. Among them, one thread stood out. Messages sent to a contact labeled "Tweet. I miss you so much. If only I could be with you forever." Hung stared at the screen, heart heavy. These were not just innocent messages. They hinted at something far more intimate, something obsessive, perhaps even dangerous. "I'd do anything for you. Just wait for me, okay?" These messages, with their timestamps matching the night of the murder, sent a chill down Hung's spine. But there was one message that stood out. "Once he disappears, you'll be freed. We can be together forever. Don't worry. I'll take care of everything." Though the sender and recipient weren't named, Hung had a gut feeling. These were Nguyen Van Tien's words to Lu Tui. The content hinted at a murder conspiracy, a plan that may have been premeditated. Could it be that Lu Tui was not just a victim, but a co-conspirator? Had she and Tien plotted to kill her husband? The implications were staggering. The new evidence began to erode Hung's belief in Thuy's innocence. The darkness behind the triangle between Lu Thuy and Tien was slowly coming to light. This case was no longer a simple homicide. It was a web of secrets, lies, and betrayal. That very day, Lu Thuy was summoned to Nam Trek District Police Headquarters. She appeared worn down, dark circles under her eyes, her face pale, marked with sadness. When questioned about her relationship with Nguyen Van Tien, Lu Thuy firmly denied everything. "We were just old friends that we haven't spoken in years." She claimed she had no knowledge of Tien's whereabouts recently and absolutely no involvement in her husband's death. But Hung didn't buy it. He had evidence, and he was ready to confront her lies. When he mentioned Nguyen Van Tien's name, he noticed a flicker in her demeanor. Her gaze faltered, her hands fidgeted with the hem of her blouse. She was clearly nervous. Hung played his trump card. He showed her the photo of the blood-stained jacket found in the abandoned house. Lu Thuy's face went pale. She was speechless. Then came Mun, the trained canine officer. As Lu Thuy approached items carrying Tien's scent, Mun reacted aggressively, barking loudly, for standing on end, ears pulled back, body tense. After Nguyen Van Tien's full confession, Lu Thuy was summoned once again to the police station. She adamantly denied any involvement in her husband's death, claiming she had been manipulated and deceived by Tien, a victim of his lies. But Hung wasn't convinced. His instincts told him she was hiding something. Nguyen Van Tien's statement, combined with the trail of evidence, suggested Lu Thuy wasn't just a bystander. Hung began to suspect she was a passive accomplice, one who stood by and did nothing, when she could have stopped it all. During interrogation, Hung brought Mun in the room. Lu Thuy accidentally dropped a handkerchief, and Mun immediately reacted. The dog barked furiously, pawing at it. Oddly enough, it was the exact same reaction Mun had to the bloody cloth found in Tien's bag. Hung's suspicions deepened. He ordered DNA testing on both items. The results? Both cloths contained Lu Thuy's DNA. This proved she had met with Tien and possibly knew about the murder plan beforehand. But it still wasn't enough. There was no direct evidence that she helped commit the murder. Legally, all they could prove was that she knew what had happened and chose to remain silent. Not enough to prosecute, but more than enough for doubt. Hung sat alone with his thoughts. He was torn between reason and emotion. His mind told him Lu Thuy was involved, but his heart didn't want to believe it. He looked at the woman crying before him, and for a moment, he felt a pang of compassion. Was she truly deserving of punishment, or was she merely another victim of circumstance, of blind love? Hung didn't yet have the answer. He knew he needed time and more evidence to uncover the full truth. This was no longer just a murder case. It had become a human tragedy, entangling hearts in a web of love, jealousy, and guilt. The next morning, Hung sat alone in his office, mind clouded with thoughts. The murder case was nearly closed, yet one knot remained. Lu Thuy's role. His mind drifted back to the day he first met Mun, a frail little pup, abandoned and trembling in fear. Hung had taken him in, trained him, and watched him grow into an exceptional police dog. Mun wasn't just a partner. He was a companion, a guide. Hung remembered how his father had taught Mun to distinguish between human and animal blood, to sense the unique, metallic tang of spilled life. Mun's instincts, Hung's reasoning. They made the perfect team. And once again, Hung believed Mun would help him find the truth. They returned to the scene, Anne's house. Suddenly, Mun darted toward the orange tree. The very spot where Nguyen Van Tien had buried in the dog began barking furiously, scratching at the soil. Hung gave the order to dig. And there, buried beneath the dirt, they found a small, crumpled piece of paper. On it, hastily scrawled, were the trembling words, "I'll wait for you." Nguyen Van Tien froze. He recognized the handwriting instantly. Lu Thuy's. That note became the final puzzle piece. It proved not only that Lu Thuy had known of the murder plan, but that she had waited for Tien after the crime. The truth struck Hung like a slap to the face. He had once believed she was only a victim, but now the evidence said otherwise. She had stayed silent. She had chosen to protect the killer. She had become part of the crime. With the note as evidence, Hung ordered Lu Tui's arrested. The charge of failure to report a crime. Her face turned pale. Her eyes lost the sorrowful warmth they once held during interrogation. The truth was out, and Lu Tui had no more lies to tell in the holding cell. She lowered her head, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She had lost everything. Her husband, her family, her dignity, and now her freedom. That a moment of blind love had dragged her into a pit of guilt from which there was no return. At the same time, Nguyen Van Tin formally confessed. He recounted in painful detail every moment of burying his body, his voice trembling, eyes red with tears, and when he spoke off the child that Lu Tui was still raising, a child not his own. He broke down completely. He sobbed like a man crushed beneath the weight of his own remorse. He knew he had destroyed not only his life, but also Lu Tui's, and that of an innocent child. Hung silently flipped through the case file, his eyes falling on his photo. That a wave of sorrow welled up inside him as he remembered his old classmate, a kind, gentle soul who had always been ready to help others. And that friend had been murdered by the one he trusted most. The case closed with a death sentence for Nguyen Van Tien and a prison term for Lu Tui. Justice had been served, but the grief of loss remained. The whirlpool of sin had swallowed 3 lives, leaving behind painful lessons about envy, about blind love, about the devastating price of crime. Hung closed the case file, his heart heavy, though his duty was fulfilled. He felt no triumph, only sorrow and regret. Spring had come. Warm breezes stirred the earth to life. Yet the air still held a faint chill of winter. Hung walked with Mun along the village path where the case had begun, a dog's unusual barking leading to a dark discovery. The scenery looked the same, but everything had changed. The criminal had been punished, but the sadness lingered. Mun, the faithful dog, trotted quietly beside Hung, a silent companion who seemed to sense his master's grief every now and then. Mun licked Hung's hand, offering comfort in his own gentle way. They passed the orange tree, the place where his body was found. There stood Mr. Tan, his aging father, his eyes gazing into the distance. Time and sorrow had carved deep lines on his face. Hung stopped and bowed his head, in no words, only a silence full of pain and respect. Meanwhile, Lu Tui spent her days in prison, haunted by guilt. She had lost everything because of a single moment of blind passion. Now she would pay the price. Her future, a long, dark road ahead. Hung returned to his desk and completed the case report. He carefully documented every detail, every clue, every step in the investigation. At the very end of the report, he wrote, "A false friend may take your life, but a loyal dog will save you, even in darkness." A tribute to Mun, his brave, devoted partner. The dog lay curled at his feet, occasionally lifting his head as if understanding Hung's thoughts. A gentle wind rustled the orange leaves outside the window, carrying the scent of spring. The case had ended, but the lessons of humanity, of loyalty, of justice would linger on. The story ends in the quiet hush between seasons, leaving behind an unforgettable echo. Debut story sincerely thanks you, our dear listeners, for joining us in this emotional journey through the eyes of Officer Hung and his loyal dog. Mun, a tale full of suspense and tension, but also rich with compassion and truth. Through this story, we wish to remind everyone, no matter how cunning the crime, justice will prevail. Live kindly, love deeply, obey the law, and help build a safer, better world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Debut Story to hear more gripping stories ahead. Debut Story bids you farewell, and we'll see you next time.